I'm an open book. I don't mind talking about anything. I like talking about everything.
Welcome to the Small Steps, Big Wins podcast. I'm dedicated to helping you take control of your life. Together, we'll explore practical tips, expert advice, and inspiring stories to help you overcome obstacles and achieve your goals. Making small changes is possible and can lead to big results. Are you ready? Let's go do this. Hey, Pat, welcome back. I'm so glad we could pick up on the conversation where we left off. I am excited.
Me too, Sue. Thanks for
How are you?
doing this, and thanks for doing it early. I was looking at my schedule. I was like, I got a mastermind in Charlotte, North Carolina that day. Let's do it today. And you were very flexible, so I appreciate
Good.
your flexibility and going with the flow.
Yeah. Hey, that's what life is, right? All in flow as best to my ability. Actually, my coach really he encouraged me. He's like, do as many podcasts as you can from now until the end of September. He said, because you're taking the entire month of October off.
What was the impetus for that advice?
So the rationale was because I still work a 40-hour a week job and
Oh,
I do most of them at night. And I think his rationale for just taking a break in October is that I'm going to regroup a little bit, have a different kind of perspective on the podcast. I'm slowly moving into the next season of my life. And I believe my calling is just to be a coach and to help people and to build out my podcast. So I need a little bit of brain time to think that through.
okay.
So, I think that was his rationale,
Well,
and
that
I'm
sounds
okay with it.
fun.
Yeah, because with all of these podcasts, actually with everybody that I have booked between now and the end of September, it takes me out to first week in January, I think.
Throttle on, throttle off. I like it.
Yep, yep. So, yeah, he finds that that helps him because he's pretty intense and, it resonated with me. Take a little bit of a break. So I want to pick up where we left off the last time. We never got a chance to dive into some of the books that you have written or co authored. And we touched a little bit on the 6 steps to 7 figures, but I was going to circle around back to Tribe of Millionaires and the Quitter's Manifesto. So let's go Tribe of Millionaires first. Do you know, I read that book for the first time last year. I read the whole book, I got to the end, and I went, are there really people out there that are like this? Like, I didn't think a tribe like that existed. And that one question that I asked myself actually led me down a series of different paths that I eventually wound up part of Emerge, which is part of Gobundance, which is what the book is based off of. So talk to me a little bit about how did the book come about? Because I know you co-authored it with David Osborne and Tim's there and Mike McCarthy. How long did it take to write it?
Well, there's a fallacy out there or a illusion out there that nonfiction books are written by the author. Very few are. I mean, if you go to some of the classics that were written 50 years ago, yes, unequivocally they were written by the author. And, in today's world, most nonfiction books were inspired by the author with some creativity by the author, but not written by the author. And with Tribe of Millionaires, that's exactly how we did it. We inspired it, threw out some ideas to a ghostwriter. That ghostwriter, we had a Gobundance trip planned for Japan, and we had 25 Gobundance members going to Japan. We invited him, he invited himself. He thought it would be really a great way for him to learn about Gobundance. He came to Japan. He sat on the bus next to all of the members. He interviewed them one by one. He had coffee with them. He walked around with them. He watched them. And then he wrote Tribe of Millionaires. And the characters in the book are not from specific members of GoBundance, but they're actually made up of maybe 4 or 5 members each. So, one character might have the mannerisms of a real person that he met in Japan and have the thought processes of another one and have the looks of a third, and he created a character out of that, and
Wow.
that's how the book was written.
That's amazing. And you know what? You answered one of my questions. I was gonna ask you, were any of the characters patterned after the real members? Because I went back and reread the book after I got to know some of the members of Gobundance. I'm like, "Oh, I can see that person there or that person there." So I thought that was really
Yeah,
interesting, but
that's
I'm
true. I think that, I let my wife and kids read it, and I asked them, and, they saw some of me in
Mhm,
some of the characters, but not so much where they could say that was you, you know what I mean?
mhm.
That was written after you. So I don't think any of them were written after anybody, though. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I saw some of you in there. I can't remember the names of the actual characters, but I remember you in there, and I could see a little bit of David in there, and I could see a little bit of Tim in there too. I don't know Mike
Mhm.
as well, so it was really a good read. It was very provoking as well, and what it did for me is that it just made me realize that there is purpose in life and that there's something bigger out there that we can go and achieve. It's not just about me, and that I can be bigger. I can be that person who I didn't think I could be. And that, just kind of opened my eyes. So,
Mhm.
why a ghostwriter? Now I'm curious. Why would you hire a ghostwriter? Because I don't know much about writing and publishing and producing
Well,
a
I
book.
think at the selfish reason is haste, you know what I mean? Like, we're not well, I don't have a degree in creative writing. I don't understand that job. And, truth be told, we if we were to write it, it probably wouldn't be very good. It'd be amateurish. It'd be
Mm,
unprofessional. So we hired a professional to do it, and we also wanted to get it done quickly, and we wanted to get it done right, and we didn't want it to be a piece of crap. Like, we didn't want to put something out there and be like, "Oh, that's junk." You know what I mean? There's
mhm,
people I know with 34 self-published books, and they're all terrible, and it's like, "Well, why are you even putting these out? Because no one's reading them." We wanted to put something out that people would read, that people would refer to other people, and that sort of thing. So, it was worthwhile for us to pay the money for this guy to fly to Japan and for this guy to write it, and he
mm.
charged by the word, so it wasn't cheap, but it was worth it.
And you know what? That kind of embodies what I've learned from GoBundance members along the way, where operate in your strengths and then understand where your weaknesses are, and then go find somebody who has that strength that is your weakness. So that's exactly what you guys did, wanted to
Right, rather than trying to build that muscle yourself.
yeah, that
Yeah.
makes complete sense. So Quitter's Manifesto?
So, that was an idea during COVID. Everybody was quitting, everybody was quiet quitting, everybody was making a lot of agitated moves in their careers with what they were doing. There's a lot of stimulus money out there. People, had money to quit and start businesses. And Tim and I came up with the idea. It seemed like an intelligent thing to create for that period of time, for that vintage. And so the same thing, we hired the same guy, Dan Clements is his name. We hired Dan. Tim and I had a lot more direction of where we wanted it to go, but Dan he was excited about it. He liked it. He thought it was really cool, and so kind of he was like he was a good partner to have in crime there. And of course, he got paid up front and we got paid in royalties. So it was
Mhm.
that's kind of how we did it. And that was that.
Do you feel like it accomplished what you guys set out to do with it, or what it was intended for?
Yeah, I mean, people emailed us and people wrote reviews and said, "Hey, guess what? I quit." you know, I quit and I'm happy I quit and thank you so much. And is very effective book, and I still think it is. I think it's a great book for that person. The audience isn't as huge as it was. Obviously, it dissipated now. People are kind of back to their seriousness and long-term job prospects, and
Mhm.
all their stimulus money is gone, and and it's a different mentality now. But I think the the need to be able to quit a 40-hour work week and start your own business and do what you love, if you don't love what you're doing now, that is, will always be there. And I think that the book every year will continue to help people. I hope that it stays a classic book and that 30 years from now people are still using it and it still makes sense, which is my hope.
Well, I'll chime in with my 2 cents. I read the book from front to back, and this started back in April, and I actually struck up a conversation with Tim, and he's like, I think you should read this book." I was toying with that back in April, and what I found out of the book is that I'm a very practical oriented person, and I found that every page as I was reading, it was filled with practical application. And so when I worked through it and got to the end, I felt confident that I had covered all of my bases that I needed to cover in order to quit my job. And what I liked was that you guys addressed, common fears, questions. And then what I also enjoyed was sprinkled in between were stories of actual people who quit their jobs and what they went into and some of their struggles, some of their challenges, some of their wins as well. And, that I appreciated because it made it more real. It wasn't just here, these are all the steps that you have to do. It's here are all the steps you have to do. And here's people who did those steps and their outcome. I enjoyed the book very much so. It's not a heavy read. It's not a big, giant, thick book, which is actually nice because you feel like you can get from beginning to end without being overwhelmed. But I found that every couple of pages, I had to stop and digest and then put into action what I just read. So for me personally, I enjoyed it. And then everybody I know who's quitting, I send them a copy of the book and recommend it. So
Well, thank you.
there's some feedback to you.
Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. I'm glad you wrote it. I think, I think books like podcasts are funny things. There's probably more people out there that have benefited than what you really know of because some just don't go back and say anything.
Mm.
So I also know that you've been a coach as well, right? Do you used to coach
um
people?
Indirectly, I never really coached per hour or anything like that. I just did it for free, or I
Mhm.
did it from the stage. But yeah, no, I never really coached. I mean, the people that worked for me, I coached. I
Mhm.
had a real estate company and I coached the agents that worked for me, but no, I never did one-on-one coaching
Yeah.
for
Okay.
money,
Because
in return for money.
okay. Now, I was just wondering what your experience was, or like common mindsets or common habits that you observed, in the people that you have coached that might have held them back from reaching their full potential.
I think the number one answer to that is simply just belief. Yeah, I think that most people are not naive enough. Like, they're just not daft enough. And I'm using negative terms because I think intelligence and thoughtfulness creates a tension with belief. And I think that faith and ignorance dissipates attention with with belief, which the path to success makes success easier. You know what I mean? It's like you don't know what you don't know. There's an old saying that you don't know what you don't know. It
Right.
means you don't know, so you did it because you didn't think that you couldn't.
Yeah.
There's some double negatives there, but that's the whole point. I think that that's what most people lack when it comes to success. It's just the belief that they can, or better yet, not having the disbelief. I think that as what you have to understand as in America, from the day that a child is born until they're 18, they are told what not to do, about 30
Mm,
times more than them being told what to do, or given a compliment. So a 2-year-old boy is don't touch that wire, you know, don't get food on your mouth, where you're just telling them what to do constantly, all negative, no encouragement. You probably do that 30 times for every encouraging word. Good job. So by the time you reach 18, your subconscious is such that you believe you can't do things or you shouldn't do things, or if you do things, something bad will happen. So you don't do them.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that mold has to be broken. And if you could break that mold and just have faith and just believe that you can do things, that's 80% of the battle, I believe.
What are some suggestions that you would have for breaking that mold?
Well, if the easiest one is, so what you got to realize is it is your subconscious mind. Like that's the only
Okay.
thing that's really in your way is yourself. So the one of the ways to break the subconscious mind is through affirmations. It's just through telling yourself that you can, setting a goal and putting that goal in an affirmative statement as if it is already happening until it manifests. And, I talk about this in my first book, Six Steps to Seven Figures, of just pretty much everything in my first 20 years of success was created through affirmations. I would set a very large goal, then I would break that very large goal down into daily goals, small goals, what needed to occur in order to manifest that, because affirmation without discipline is insanity. So you write the affirmation, I am a millionaire. You write the daily goal of, I save $1 a day or $10 a day and don't spend it, or I do a podcast a day, or I do a podcast a day that generates me $100. Whatever the daily activity is related to money and related to getting that money, and then you listen to it over and over again. You record it on your phone and you just listen to it over and over again until one of two things happens. Number one, you stop listening and you quit, or number two, it manifests itself, and inevitably one of those two are going to happen. And for me, most of the time, the latter happened because I didn't give up. I just kept listening to it. There were some affirmations that didn't happen the year that I wanted them to, but I kept them on my subconscious affirmation tape, let's say, for 5 years. And then finally,
Mm.
after 5 years, they finally happened just because I kept listening to them. And I was like, okay, this is the year this is going to happen because I want to change the recording here. So,
What was an affirmation that didn't happen right away that you could think of? And what kept you going? Like, why didn't you give up?
yeah, maybe some, health goals. I think health goals are very hard,
Mm.
like I weigh this much, or I eat a salad with every meal, or I anything like that I found a little tougher, right? And some of them were just pushed aside by markets. Like we can control, there's so much that we can control, but there's also stuff in this world we can't control. I remember, the first time I became a millionaire, I think the stock market was rising so high. This was like 1999, 2000, and it was just easy for people to make money. Everything you touch turned to gold, and I had like 1.2 million dollars, and I was like, "Yahoo, I'm a millionaire." And I just, okay, my next year, my goal was to have 2 million. I was like, well, shit, I've got a million. That was easy. I'm going to go to two. I set my goals and affirmations. I'm going to do this. I'm going to save this much at this rate. But the market had other ideas, and that 1.2 million, next thing you know, lo and behold, it was worth 350,000 because the market crashed, and I had a lot of margins and things, and I just lost $800,000 in a period of a year. And I don't care how many affirmations I said or what I did, it it was worth what it was worth, and I wasn't a millionaire anymore. So there's certainly market things that are out of our control, and you got to be ready for that. But the key is just to keep plugging along and, not give up.
$800,000 to lose. That's a
Yeah.
lot of money. That's a
Oh,
lot of money
devastating.
to lose. How did you navigate that time? I mean, I can't imagine losing that amount of money. I
Yeah,
get
it was e
upset over $100, so
I guess I had to convince myself easy come, easy go, Looking back, I don't even remember, like I remember my account got flagged because it was high risk, and the
Mhm.
broker called me from the bathroom saying, "You gotta talk to my boss because I'm gonna get fired because of your account." I mean, some of it a lot of it was my fault, it was greed, but at the same time, it worked temporarily. So, anyways, I think, but I also think once your mind is expanded to that, once you're like expand, your mind is stretched. I'm a millionaire. You know what I mean? You're not gonna. It would be terrible to stay in that position where where you don't try to get there again and reach the top again and just stay at you know.
To become a millionaire in the first place, there has to be some drive behind it, so to lose that amount of money doesn't necessarily negate the desire to want to do it again. It doesn't deter you. There's some people it might, but for you, it didn't. So
Yeah, I
that's
was
great.
still in my 30s. I was still young, and I had a lot of hope left and a lot of time
Mhm.
left and a lot of ways to make it back. So
Yeah. You were doing real estate at that time as well, yes? It
I was
wasn't just a
selling real estate. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it wasn't just a stock portfolio, and I understand just because 'cause I'm in the securities industry, what you mean by margin. I won't go into it and explain it, but yes, if you're not careful and you margin your brokerage account that you have in there, it can be if the market changes in the wrong direction quickly, I could see where you could lose $800,000 in the
Mhm.
course of sometimes people it's like overnight. So, nonetheless, doesn't make it any less devastating, but definitely, I can see how that happened. If you could choose a different career than what you chose in life, what would you
Mm.
do? Not real estate related. What would you have done?
So I'm gonna rephrase that question if
Okay,
I could.
sure.
So if I graduated college with $10 million in the bank, what career would I have done? Because I think it's two different things. Because because I'm a money hungry guy. I like money, and I like it, and my decisions were based on money. The reason I got into real estate was my friends were selling cars and computers, making $150 every sale, and I saw that I could make $3,000 a sale, and that to me made a lot more sense. So,
Mhm.
I saw a shortcut. I didn't love houses or love fireplaces and kitchens and people that were emotionally uh, hyped up in a process of buying the biggest thing they ever bought. I didn't like any of that. I liked the game of closing the deal and making money and that sort of thing. So if that's okay, can I answer it
Oh,
that way?
sure. It's your podcast. You can do whatever you want.
Well, that way money's not, what people want to believe that we have a choice, but most people don't have a choice.
Mhm.
Right? Most people have to make money. Women more than men have the ability to decide a labor of love. I think it's
Mm.
kind of a bit of a double standard, right? But we won't get into that. But a lot of people go into where the money's at. Culturally, their parents might tell them, "Hey, you should be a doctor. You should be a lawyer. You should be, whatever." They think I'm broke. I need money quick. Being a high school gym teacher is only going to pay me so much, even though I would love to do it. Anyways, to make a long story short, the answer is investigative journalist because I like to stir the pot. I like to ask questions like you. I like to speak the truth and get to the bottom of the truth and cut through bullshit like nobody's business. And I think an investigative journalist who was a freelance one, who wasn't told by like a newspaper what they could and couldn't report on, who would just go to people's houses and go to people's workplace and stick the microphone on them and say, is it true that you stole $10 million from the company, or is it true that you know, had an affair with your secretary, or is it true? You know what I mean? Like just that guy, right? Uh,
Mhm.
that's something that, always intrigued me and I felt would fit. Also, I have a creative sense, and I feel like, a creative writer of some sort. So that all ties into, I guess, journalism, writing. That would be my answer. I think that's what I would have done. Whether I would have stuck with it, I don't know. But I think that if I had $10 million in the bank as I graduated from college, yeah, and it was today,
Mhm.
I would definitely create a Substack account and just start investigating stuff.
So, I'm assuming the $10,000,000 is what would help do that because the job isn't gonna
Psychological.
psychological, yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
'Cause when you're 21, 22, you graduate college, you need
Mhm,
money and you want money. You want a nicer car, you wanna buy your first house, you wanna buy a wedding ring for your fiance, you wanna, you wanna save, you wanna there's a lot of things you can't afford. So there's a lot of things that you wanna do, and
mhm.
sometimes and a lot of times we make decisions on how we make the money that are priority to, "Oh, this is the work that I love," right?
So, let me ask you then, when you started making money as a realtor way back, what was your view on stuff? You just talked about the kids in their 20s, they want cars, or they want this, or they want that.
I just wanted money. I was very minimalist, very, unflashy, very I can remember being 23 or 24, and I had $8,000, and it was the first $8,000. It was the first large amount of money that I actually just had. Man, it was probably 22 that I didn't need to spend, and I called my dad and I said, "Dad, I got $8,000. What do you know? Should I do a certificate of deposit? What should I do with this?" Yeah. And he was like, "Yes, right. Bank CD is fine." Would he give me some advice or whatever? I don't remember what it was, but I actually realized he didn't really know what I should do with it. And I think it was very uncomfortable for me asking him at the time because I was thinking to myself, he probably doesn't have $8,000, which I don't think he did. So it sticks out of my mind.
Mhm.
But yeah, I just wanted to save. I wanted to invest. I wanted to buy houses, buy stocks, buy whatever. I just wanted to put it away.
So how did you start learning about all that then? Because, go back, I mean, same thing with me growing up. Like we didn't talk about money. You never talked. That was like the taboo. Money and sex. They were the two things nobody ever talked about. Everybody had and did, but nobody talked about it. So how did you figure it out? Not sex, the
Well,
money.
I was a yeah. Well, as a real estate agent, it's funny you say that because it's hard. People don't understand before the internet and before all that, we didn't
Mhm.
really like, I didn't know, and related back to sex because I had wished the internet was, I would have been a lot better at sex and a lot more better at picking up girls or talking to girls and everything if I had some sort of instruction, but there was literally no instruction at all, you know? And the
I'm
same
laughing.
thing with
Same. It's the same thing.
you know what I mean? Like it
Yeah.
was there was no real book or I guess there probably was, but it wasn't in my house. So, and the same thing with money, right? Like it was nothing. I mean, there was a few books here and there you could read. I think books helped. Books were Books were more prevalent. Like people would recommend a book, and I would devour books. And there's courses you could take. There's
Mhm.
people you can meet.
Does anything stand out from that time?
Well, I think I've built my whole life on learning from other people, and I think that's
Mhm.
why GoBundance, in the long run, GoBundance is a perfect fit for my soul. I think because I'm such a people person, and I get so much off of every person that I meet that I realize that other people get so much off of other people,
Mhm.
more than you can for the most part from a book or a course. So I felt like that my whole life. When I first started real estate, I can name off 5 people that had a major impact on me that I remember vividly. I could tell you what they used to look like and dress like and things they said. advice they gave me, and I just kind of was like a very focused person for advice, and that's kind of how I learned was other people.
I would say that's my experience today when I joined Emerge back in October, and then everybody that I've met since seek to give more than you take, but I mean, I've had wonderful conversations with so many people and just walked away with a little bit of them each time and for that I'm thankful. And you're right, you can only learn so much from a book. You can't really interact with a book the way you can interact with people and learn and grow and, give a little piece of yourself and take a little piece of them along with you. So that's what we were talking about. Is there anything you wanted to talk about that I didn't ask?
No, I mean, I'm an open book. I don't mind talking about anything. I like talking about everything.
What's, on the horizon for you for your next adventure? Because I know you guys are all about adventure. What's the next big one?
Colombia.
Ooh,
Yeah, we have about 15 guys going in September to Colombia, South America,
nice.
and we're going to do a lot of adventure activities and things like that.
Who gets to
So
pick where you go?
we have a bucket list committee, actually. Buddy Martin, Camille Morris, Imran Khan, Casey Wright are the four members that make up the bucket list committee at Gobundance, and they talk about they're planning a trip to Australia next year. If you're listening, you could join GoBundance and go to Australia for an amazing 2-week mastermind with some of the most successful people in the world.
That's
And
exciting.
they're
That's for
planning.
guys, though, I have to
Yep,
say.
that's for
It's just for the
guys.
guys, girls can't
That's for
go.
the guys. Yeah, yeah.
But
It's
there
just
is a GoBundance Women's, and they
and
do
I'll talk about that.
yeah.
The reason that we do that is because of, we don't want to create an atmosphere of infidelity where, as they say, a willpower. And this is probably I shouldn't say this, but I will. It's like it's not willpower doesn't work, right? It's why put yourself in that position, and so we don't mix the sexes, especially on a trip like that. And it's also like the wives have to give permission, right, for the husbands to go to Australia for 10 days. And so we do have a GoBundance women, they do their own trips and things like that, and it works well. I think people are more authentic. We have on these trips, we do our one sheets, we talk deep stuff. We have guys crying. We have guys, explaining, confessing, or being ultra authentic about things that I think they would never do if there were other sexes on the bus or in the room, and they're very, very deep. So, anyways, we have that. We have a Kentucky Derby. We bought 2 boxes to the Kentucky Derby. And what else do Buddy and Camille have? They have a hike down the Grand Canyon and then back up through the Grand Canyon. They're working on like a front row seats to an MMA fight in Las Vegas.
Oh,
Yeah, so there's several bucket list
wow.
items that they're working on now.
Yeah. Oh, wow. And, I made the comment about the trip is just for the guys, and it was more of a factual thing, but from a woman's perspective, I agree 100% with what you said because if you have a co-ed trip and you're really diving into some deep issues, it's very difficult to be authentic and talk about something if there's men in the room or if there's women in the room. You'll be more careful about what you're going to say. And when you put a bunch of guys together, guys are going to talk about guy things. Likewise, same for the women. I had the privilege and experience to be able to go on a GoBundance Women's retreat a couple months ago, and it was very intimate. And we talked about things that if there were men in the room, I think it would make it uncomfortable. So I appreciate that, that there's
Yeah,
that they
it just is what it is,
it
right?
is what
It's
it
not.
is, right, right. There is a
Yeah,
couples component, though. I mean, there is part
yeah,
of yeah, part of GoBundance, there is Go Wives, there's Go Fam, which is for the
yeah.
family oriented stuff, and I think there's a couples trip.
There is. I'm going to Costa Rica at the end of October with couples, with, you know, 10 GoBundance couples, and my wife loves that.
Yeah.
That's her favorite trip of the year.
That's great. That's exciting. Well, as we wrap up our time together, Pat, it wouldn't be a Small Steps Big Wins podcast with at least having you leave us with some small step that we could do today that's going to change our tomorrow. So,
Well, yeah, I mean, small steps, right? That's where people don't understand, especially today. I feel like these kids these days, they don't realize that the small steps lead to the big wins. Like they think that it just one big step and you're there to generalize. And I think that like people ask me like how did okay, Gobundance is over 1,000 members, men and women now. So it's like people are like, well, how did that happen? Whatever. I was like, well, it seems like it was overnight, but we started this like 10, 11 years ago. Like we were battling with this thing, so it takes time. You don't realize that, you don't see it. And I think the same thing is with wealth. You don't, you buy a house, it's not going to happen overnight, but over 20 years or whatever, if you hold on to it, you're going to be doing well with it. The same with stocks, with anything, right? Like
mhm,
the key is longevity. So I think the small steps are actually just taking the action of doing it rather than not doing it. And back to my original example of, I am a millionaire, I am a millionaire. Well, the small step is I saved $10 today and I don't plan on spending it, or I saved a hundred
mhm.
dollars today and I don't plan on spending it. So that would be the small step, is you have to actually sit down and journal out what is the small step. If your job is, say, let's just say selling real estate, because that's what I did. I will call 10 people today and remind them that I'm a real estate agent and I want business. That is the small step that I could do today that compounded. If I do that every day, I'm going to be the top agent in my office.
I appreciate your time, Pat. I really do. I enjoy talking to you because you never know where we're gonna go. And I
Right.
have to tell you, I titled the other episode that we did, it was I think it was OMG Wisdom, Real Estate, and Rabbit Holes. Conversation with Pat or something like that, because it did. We just kind of went all over the place, but it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I try not to answer with cliches, and sometimes when you don't answer with cliches, you get very different answers, so, I do that on purpose, so, and they could be considered rabbit holes, but the dots connect
They do.
nonetheless.
Yeah, they do. No, I enjoyed it. Yeah, I enjoyed it. Well, in the podcast world, you kinda need a catchy, title anyway,
I
so
love
that
it.
people will listen.
I'll take it.
I'll take it too. Well, again, thanks for your time, Pat. I'm laughing because the last time I asked this question, I got the answer I didn't expect. How do you want people to reach out to you?
Yeah. So the answer to that is however you want. Personally, I'm on Instagram, which is my nickname Wiggy, Wiggy, Wiggy Hiban. And you could always go to the Gobundance website if you want more information about Gobundance. You can go to Amazon.com for all of my books. Just type my name in, and I'm easy to find.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. I'm laughing because I have to ask before we close because it'll just bug me if I don't. How'd you get the nickname Wiggy?
It was a fraternity pledge name because I got drunk and I ran around in circles in a dance, and they said that boy is wigging out. And then every time I went to dance for music or whatever, they were like, look at him wig out because I'm so uncoordinated. So they just gave me that name.
Well, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, no problem.
Now I can officially end the podcast because
Yes, you
now I
can.
know where Wiggy came from. Pat,
There
you
you go.
have an awesome day.
You
Thank
too,
you.
Sue. It's always fun.
I want to thank you for watching or listening to my podcast. I value your time with me because I realize you could be listening to someone else right now. And I also want you to know that I now offer coaching and consulting. So if you're thinking about creating a course but not sure how to structure it, or you have a small step you need to take to lead to a big result, but you're not sure what the in between looks like, Check out my website at www.suesaller.com for more information and to request a free consultation. Remember, life doesn't get better by chance, it gets better by choice. Take small steps and make today awesome, friends. God bless.